Welcome back to another Mobalytics tier list video, and this time we're going over all of this week's changes and updates since patch 12.13, and that cheeky little hotfix too. Before we get started, don't forget to click the link in the description and see both the low and high elo tier lists in full for yourself, and all of the other tasty content we have like our video guides, our counter videos and combos for every single champion. Well, let's crack on then and start off with the top lane as usual. In the God tier we have Darius and Wukong. In the S tier we have Dr. Mundo, Garen, Shen, Yorick, Lilia, Ornn, Mordekaiser, Kayle, Olaf and Akshan. Camille, Jax, Riven and Vayne all move back up to the A tier from that B tier. Yone, Tryndamere, Tahm Kench, Warwick and Poppy move down to the B tier and Sion falls into the C tier. Now Gwen got some pretty juicy buffs last patch which were hotfixed the very next day after patch 12.13. She became a bit crazy to be honest, and the next day nerfs were definitely very welcome. Gwen is one of those champions and always has been that's a bit hard to balance. She seems to be either completely abused or a bit too useless. Last week's changes were aimed at making her more all-rounded and more approachable for low elo players, and they definitely did that for sure, but they also tipped her over the edge a bit. Now though, a week later she's in a fairly balanced spot, but for Gwen to have a relatively impressive win rate is a sign she's doing very well. Her win rate jumped up by around 3% last patch, and therefore we're going to keep her in the A tier after moving her up there last week. Kled also got some love this week, but the thing is with this champion he's only really good in the right hands. You may not think it, but Kled's actually a bit of a one-trick champion. He's got a pretty cheesy, hyper-aggressive playstyle, and he only really wins when he stomps that lane phase. And by the way, when he does snowball, he's actually insanely hard to beat. Kled's win rate did see an increase of around 1% last week, which has definitely made a difference, but it's not going to move him out of that one-trickable champion category, and therefore he keeps his place in the B tier for now. Olaf also got some changes last patch, aiming to buff his jungle and nerf him in the top lane, but they just didn't really do too much. The hype of Olaf has died down significantly though, as he was an absolute terror with his mid-scope update when it first hit the rift. He's still performing really well up top in that S tier, but he's not quite completely broken anymore. He did also see a marginal decrease to his win rate in that top lane and a tiny increase in the jungle. No shifts for his placements this week though. Onto the jungle now, and we've got no champs in the God tier, but in the S tier we have Diana, Warwick, Zac, Trundle, Master Yi, Amumu, Shyvana, Wukong, Rammus and Fiddlesticks. Kha'Zix, Talon and Elise all move up from B to A, and Taliyah reappears back into the jungle for low elo into the B tier too. Volibear, Bel'Veth and Nunu move from S to A, and Nocturne and Vi move from A to B. Several buff champions in the jungle this patch, and some more so than others. Evelynn, Karthus, Elise and Taliyah all saw improvements, but there's some certain champions that stood out a bit more above the rest. Master Yi became absolutely busted the day he got patched. He went from like a 48% win rate to nearly 60% as soon as that patch hit, and he was completely and utterly broken. Thankfully though, Riot addressed this the very next day, and he saw some nerfs instantly. These have without a doubt made a huge difference though, and brought him back into a more stable state. Now he's a lot stronger than patch 12.12, but not completely broken. Master Yi is however now in that S tier again for low elo in the jungle, where he has been on and off so much throughout this season, and in recent seasons too. In high elo though, Master Yi is nowhere to be found. Fiddlesticks is back with a vengeance, and League's most terrifying champion is now scarier than ever. Fiddlesticks' win rate jumped up by around 3.5%, which is pretty crazy, especially seeing as he wasn't actually included in that hotfix list the day after. He is just one of those champions we've really seen fall off recently, and although there is still quite a lot of Fiddlesticks one-tricks and fanatics out there, he's definitely been less common this season. This patch though, that's just not the case anymore. His pick rate has shot up through the moon, and now he's well and truly back in the meta, and winning a lot of games. As long as you know how to do those clears and take down multiple camps at once, and then you just press R in teamfights, you're going to have a lot of fun this patch. Volibear finally received some hefty nerfs last patch, and we can all finally stop banning this champion every single game. Volibear has been dominating the jungle for so long this season, and although he was always kind of thought of as a low elo jungler, he also started destroying high elo too. Well, the nerfs have definitely grounded him a little bit, and his win rate is starting to become a lot more tolerable. Volibear is going to move down to the A tier this week after his 2.5% decrease to his win rate this patch, but it is still pretty high though. We may consider moving him back up to the S tier next week, but we are going to see how this week pans out. Moving into that mid lane now then, and in the God tier we have Seraphine and Swain. Still in the S tier we have Anivia, Heimerdinger, Ahri, Victor, Veigar, Zilean, Diana and Kassadin. Only some minor changes in the mid lane this patch, with Vex moving back into the A tier and Fizz moving down to B. Vex has been a bit non-existent since that durability patch nearly 2 months ago. She simply needs to one-shot someone to be relevant because of the nature of her kit and her playstyle, meaning she needs those ultimate resets. Well, now she got a bit of attention from Riot's balance team, she's actually bounced back really well. Her win rate saw an increase of around 4%, which is actually kind of mad, and no one really expected this one. Vex has always been a pretty strong champion since her release, and when she gets fed and snowballs, she can roll over games so easily by herself. However, with so many people having so much more HP recently, she's definitely been struggling. This patch though, she is back and winning a ton more games in patch 12.13. If you haven't already tried her since these buffs, now is a great time to revisit her, because honestly, we might actually see some nerfs if her win rate continues to be this impressive. Taliyah has been so up and down since her mid-scope update, which does seem to be a common trend with champions receiving these mini reworks. I for one am all for it though. Updating older or struggling champions in my opinion is a great way to keep League of Legends in flow, as with so many new champions releasing, especially so this year, we don't want to lose any of those classic boys and girls and monsters from back in the day. Taliyah was an absolute monster when she had that update, and then she got nerfed a few times and became a bit irrelevant. Now these buffs though have brought her back into the game, and she's got some very healthy win rates in the jungle, the mid lane and even the support roles too. The mid lane does seem to be her best role though, and this patch has got around a 2% increase to her win rate here. This champion just brings a lot to the table, and when she's strong you can really feel her impact. She's got great wave clear, poke, burst, CC, roam potential, and map pressure with that ultimate. So if you do enjoy her, keep playing her in this patch. Corki is one of those champions that we've seen fall off quite a fair bit too. His Luden's Hydro Mirror Mana setup was quite the spectacle back towards the start of the season, but his popularity has pretty much dipped. Corki's win rate has been fairly unimpressive for quite a while though, and it seems like it isn't going to change anytime soon, with this week's changes also making him fall even further down into the depths of the tier list. Corki's actually been one of those picks that does fare much better at higher ranks because of the tendency to be very efficient with farm and scale up far more often. In lower elo games though, you just fight when you're weak and never really get the ball rolling. Either way though, on whatever rank you are, Corki just isn't actually having the best time at the moment. Let's move down into the bot lane then and move on to those AD carries. In the God tier, we only have one champion, and surprise surprise, it's Seraphine. In the S tier, we have Jhin, Twitch, Vayne and Sivir. Samira, Misfortune and Vigor all move from S to A, and Tristana moves down into the B tier. Now, Nilah joined the party last week, and I've been having a lot of fun with this champion. Her win rate hasn't quite stabilised yet, as people are still figuring out how to play her and build her and who to play her with and who to play her against, but those that do know what they're doing are having quite a lot of success. Nilah does have some pretty blatant strengths, but also some fairly obvious weaknesses. She's got insane damage, good kill pressure, her passive improved shielding and healing is pretty ridiculous, and the XP gains she gets too are pretty crazy. If you partner her up with a Seraphine or other scaling, sustaining, shielding supports, it's kinda nuts the stuff you can actually pull off. Nilah is really low range though, and she has a pretty risky playstyle for such a squishy AD carry. This naturally means that she's going to fall off as the game progresses, as you can often just die so easily in those teamfights, especially if you're punished for your poor cooldown management. In the right games and with the right comps though, Nilah is a fantastic pick, and therefore she's just going to sit in the A tier for now. Sivir's rework also made her a bit nuts all of a sudden, and like I said, this does seem to be a recurring theme with champions who receive these updates. Champions like Olaf, Swain, Taliyah, Sivir, Janna, you get my point. Well, Sivir's changes did make her a bit overpowered too, and she was one of the other champions who got hotfixed immediately after the changes went live. Sivir just has a ton of consistent damage, she works into pretty much all matchups and team comps, and her overall teamfighting impact is unquestionable. Her win rate has dropped a tiny bit after the hotfix, but honestly she's still pretty insane, and if you haven't played her yet, why not? Karthus also got some buffs last patch, and he's pretty underrated already as a bot laner. Now, despite not too many people playing it, it's actually really strong, and not just because he scales into a late game powerhouse, but it also packs a serious amount of damage and kill threat in the early game too. Last week's changes added to this even further, and he's seen a 2% increase in his win rate. He's also seen the same numbers increase in the jungle too though, so whether you do enjoy playing him, he's definitely a bit better after those buffs. Well, we're just going to finish off quickly with those supports, and yet another patch with very few changes to this role. In the God tier, we have Renata, Glask and Janna, still as the same as last patch. And in the S tier, we have Nami, Sona, Soraka, Taric, Zillion, Senna, Seraphine and Blitzcrank. Now, this video is a tier list update video where we talk about the champions changed with the buffs and nerfs, and with no champions affected here, we're just going to briefly mention the support changes coming into patch 12.14. So it's going to be a pretty big patch. Enchanters and healing throughout the game is going to be nerfed pretty significantly. Absolutely everything to do with healing, from champions and items to runes and potions. So it seems like it will cause a pretty big shift in the meta, yet again, especially so in the support role. Various supports and AD carries are being nerfed next week, like Renata, Seraphine, Sivir and Zeri. Janna and Yuumi are also having pretty big nerfs to their healing and shielding. Then you've got those other bot lane champions that are being buffed, like Alistar and Varus. With all of these champions changes alongside the items and healing and everything else, get ready for a whole new meta in patch 12.14. We definitely think next week's patch is going to impact the bot lane the most, but it will have a big impact on the rest of the game too. Let's see how these changes pan out and how we can expect the game to change again. Thanks everybody for watching our low elo tier list updated video for patch 12.13. We'll be back yet again next week to talk about all of the changes coming in with patch 12.14. Have a great week guys, enjoy the sun, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.